It is a holy mother-like being who imparts the loving and merciful side of God. It is the final form of female angel Digimon. When last we saw our heroes, they had gathered as they struggled against Milleniummon. However, with the arrival of two of the three great angels, the 8 mega level Digimon now prepare for an assault against the monstrous being. As Milleniummon prepared for battle, it watched as 6 of the mega level Digimon took to the air in order to assault it. As the inquisitive Yggdrasil watched, as it was wondering how the solution to defeating Milleniummon would take place, and if these mega level Digimon actually had what it took to stop the rampaging threat. As the assault seemed to never end, the sky was filled with explosions and smoke as Milleniummon was cascaded in a bombardment from all of the mega level Digimon. However, this didn't seem to be effective that much, as all of a sudden Milleniummon burst through, unfazed by the damage it had taken. As Ophanimon realized that this would not work, as Milleniummon immediately knocked 6 of them out of the sky, as both Ophanimon and Seraphimon were surprised, as they watched Hercules, Kabuterimon, Phoenixmon go crashing to the ground alongside them, as both Metal Garurumon and Wargreymon would take back to the air, as they were able and more willing to continue to fight. However, this would be a mistake, as Milleniummon had charged up its cannons, and seeing as those two were the only ones in the air, it fired, as both were hit, as Metal Garurumon was in the path, and Wargreymon wanted to make sure that the others were not harmed, as Milleniummon had aimed straight for the digital world. As the light dissipated away and the clouds of smoke faded, unfortunately floating in the air was Wargreymon and Metal Garurumon, both looking as if they had both disappeared. Although their bodies remained floating, they seemed lifeless, as this terrified the Digimon on the ground. As the others wondered what they should do, it would be Ophanimon and Seraphimon who would offer a solution, believing that if they could send their energy to both Metal Garurumon and Wargreymon, that they may actually stand a chance and could be saved. As the 4 Digimon that had known them the longest didn't even have to contemplate, they asked what they needed to do. It was clear that these angelic Digimon knew what they were talking about, and they could be trusted, as they'd be informed that they must share their power to both Ophanimon and Seraphimon in order to send it to both of their friends in the sky. As this began, it slowly began to drain their energy and put a tax on them, as they began to realize that all this energy was just not what they had. However, it would be the feelings, the emotions, and everything that comprised their data. As they struggled to maintain their forms, they would send their energy to Seraphimon and Ophanimon, as they knew this was the option that would save everyone. As finally it came together. As the energy fully coalesced, both Ophanimon and Seraphimon knew it was time, as they launched to the air, filled with power, as the power of miracles and the power of hope would hopefully save the day. As the power erupted in the sky, the light of evolution shined once again. However, this time it would be different, as the energy began to tap to the bodies of the 2 fallen Digimon. They began to react, as Wargreymon's body twitched, its eyes lit up, and Metal Garurumon's body was enveloped into its own head. The power transcended, as a Digi-Egg or a Digitama was formed, and inside, a Digimon was about to appear. Surprising all the allies on the ground and their friends, they were completely surprised that a new being of both bodies had now been comprised and appeared, as from the egg emerged a warrior containing both the heads of their friends, however a singular body, as it looked prepared to defeat Milleniummon. As it appeared in front of it, it said that it was the Omega, and then now would be dubbed Omegamon. As Omegamon decided it was time to take the battle to Milleniummon, it charged in at the raging creature. Unknowing to Milleniummon, although that it's very strong, it doesn't necessarily have the mental capacity to do strategy. So as it flew in, it was unprepared as Omegamon launched the barrage of missiles from the Milleniummon head that it had, showing off the powers of both of the Mega-level Digimon. As this storm of missiles smashed into it, it was unprepared as Omegamon had drawn the gray sword and had prepared to charge in, as it would make a proud declaration that it was coming for his head. As Milleniummon simply reached out to try to grab at Omegamon, Omegamon pulled out the Supreme Cannon hiding inside Metal Garurummon's mouth. And from it, a large blast of the Supreme Cannon hit Milleniummon square, as it took it back as the power was extremely devastating. And with that, Omegamon followed up with a slash of the Transcendent Sword itself. And Milleniummon had a deep cut running all the way up, down to its body. Not enough to completely destroy it, but enough to enrage it to no end. Seeing that this new Digimon may actually pose a threat, Milleniummon decided it was time to finally continue what it was always going to do. As it began to roar, a black vortex-like structure began to emit from its body, and waves of disruption began to reverberate as the digital world around the heroes and villain alike began to warp, as if for some reason it was being drained into Milleniummon. As Milleniummon was attempting to absorb all the possible data that it could actually accumulate in order to do something that they were not sure of. As the ground reverberated and from the desert itself, the black Digitron secreted from the birth of Milleniummon began to activate as whatever the void warps were, they began to absorb the data around it, and the black Digitron as well, as they all began to be enveloped inside of the portal. As around the digital world in various places, the black Digitron that had slowly been making its way around the world had begun to react as data was being sent from these points. And even to the extent of the power that Milleniummon was absorbing, it began to distort the area, as out of nowhere, it seemed that both Omegamon and even Milleniummon were in a void. And unfortunately, the power that began to surround Milleniummon changed color as a green ring-like structure began to form. As unfortunately for them, it was trying to undergo another evolution. However, because of the fighting and the damage it took from Omegamon, this had been delayed, as now it would need to amass more data in order to construct its new body. As Omegamon would wonder what is happening, as to its shock it was now floating in white, seemingly endlessness with the monstrous creature. As we returned down to the ground, all the heroes, were now terrified, as they were unsure of what to do, already tapping nearly all of their strength in order to help Omegamon. They now did not have anything left to fight with. However, it was proposed by the angels that there was one more thing they could do. If they were to impart all of their energy now, and all of their being together, there is a chance that Omegamon may be able to defeat this Milleniummon even through its evolution. However, this was a gamble, as they were unsure of how much power it was actually gathering. And although they were able to form Omegamon, it was not enough to sustain it forever. So, in order to make sure that this was their only chance, they had to make a decision. As the rest of them knew already what they needed to do, as they would say to their friend above that was fighting, both of them, that goodbye, friends. As Phoenixmon, Vikemon, Hercules Kabuterimon, and even Rosemon decided it was time. As they began to warp all of their energy into their being, it took the color of a cluster, a circle, and even Seraphimon and Ophanimon knew that their best chance was to do the same, as they had two shining golden orbs of their energy, as they were deciding that it was time to finally aid Omegamon. As these orbs began to float, they launched into the sky, headed directly towards Omegamon, as all 6 of their powers would be what was needed to save the digital world. As the energy was about to envelop Omegamon, the silhouettes of all the Mega-level Digimon, their friends, and their 2 new allies would simply tell them to have mercy, as they would eventually vanish, and the power that was sent to Omegamon was finally realized, as it began to swarm around, and they were absorbed. Omegamon would undergo an evolution, one that would not be seen for very long, and would not be seen again for a very long time, as the cape crystallized and transformed into luminescent white wings. Its body underwent a color change as well, as the Metal Garurumon's head became white, overflowing with power, and Metal Wargreymon's head did the same. As the power was so much, the blade and cannons that normally reside inside became outside, as the power was too much. As its features hardened, it unleashed its arms both together, and to everyone's surprise, it would dub this form after the name of the word that its friends had spoken to it, as this was Merciful Mode. As Merciful Mode, although angry inside from the loss of its friends and allies, it knew what it needed to do and decided that without even using its emotions, it would strike down Milleniummon as it raised the blade high into the sky, as electrical lightning began to exude from it. This lightning was that of the heavenly divine punishment, as, unfortunately for Milleniummon, it wouldn't have time to react, as once Merciful Mode took a swing, the deep cuts immediately appeared across it, harming Milleniummon severely, as this was enough to break its ability to absorb data, but also, at the same time, severed part of it off, as the top layer that consisted of this massive creature that looked like Machinedramon came off, as the cannons as well were cut clean from Milleniummon. As Milleniummon was struggling to use whatever it amassed to keep its body together, it was in severe pain as the top half just fell off. However, before any more damage could be taken, a ripping void ripped open behind Milleniummon as a black hole began to appear. As this hole appeared, a voice would just simply yell, "Omegamon, end this." Understanding that this may be some type of help from its friends, it obliged, as it turned the newly powered-up cannon loose against a Milleniummon and began to fire. As Milleniummon was unprepared, it was barely able to hold it off, as more of its body disappeared, and when there was nothing left but barely its face and torso, it was blown into the void, as the hole had completely enveloped it. As to wherever Milleniummon's whereabouts were, it would be unknown. As the first half of Milleniummon, as it began to slightly disintegrate more and more, would plunge into the dark abyss of the net ocean itself. This would be something of another tale, as it began to float deeper and deeper to the bottom. In the case of Milleniummon, it crashed down in some area that had not yet been accessible, as Yggdrasil had not completed it, this being the dark area. As one of its first members, it would crash land as the rest of its body began to disintegrate. It would vow that it would return someday, as we would eventually leave the dark area. As we would notice that the digital world began its restoration, Omegamon, Merciful Mode, was able to disperse some of its energy to at least heal the area. Although not enough to completely repair it, the digital world would have to do it on its own. Merciful Mode was at least able to spare some of its energy to fix the damage that had been done. And as Merciful Mode wondered what it would do next, something bizarre happened, as it was warped away. As 1 minute it was in the sky, the next minute it was in a jet white area with hexagons everywhere. Wondering where it had been, or where it had gone. However, standing before it was a white creature. A white creature it did not know. However, little did it know that this creature had been watching it always, and believed it was finally time to meet the hero. And in this case, a new beginning would take place. as Omegamon will now have to confront the digital world's creator. Well, at least this server's creator. To understand what will happen next, you'll have to tune into the next part. And let's hope that Omegamon makes the right choice. This is Brad from the Ad Army signing off. And for all of you out there to sign on.